our 360 profiles are designed to give you a variety of points of view on a single topic, building a bigger and more nuanced picture than you usually get as a producer looking at a seminar. That's the idea behind this particular new session for us. And then when that topic is a game-changing, era-defining show like The Walking Dead, you know there's always more than meets the eye. Fox International Channels is our sponsor for this session. Thank you very much, Fox International Channels. We're truly thankful to have their support. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator. She is a columnist and writer at the Los Angeles Times, where she's been a member of 2 teams of journalists that have been honored with the Pulitzer Prize. Please, a warm welcome for Patt Morrison. It's all yours.
Thank you, Vance. You've got bios of the panelists in your app, but I want to briefly tell you who everyone is. Of course, Gale Hurd, you know, is an executive producer of The Walking Dead, CEO of Valhalla Entertainment, veteran of The Incredible Hulk and the Terminator trilogy. Gale. Marci Wiseman is AMC's head of business affairs for AMC Networks and Studios. You can see who she is. Sharon Tal Yguado is Executive Vice President Global Scripted Programming and Original Development at Fox International Channels. And David Alpert is a partner of Circle of Confusion Film and Television Management, a rep and a producer, also executive producer at The Walking Dead. The first zombie movie was made 81 years ago. It was called White Zombie. It had Bela Lugosi. And I think we can say, you've come a long way, Undead Baby. So what made it into the phenomenon it is? The combination of people, material, the performers, of course, the storylines, everything about this was lightning in a bottle, and the bottle has been uncapped, and now it is a worldwide phenomenon. So I'm going to talk and ask the panel as well, and I think you've been asked about question cards that are going to be collected from the audience. As you have questions toward the end of this session that we can ask, that we can put to our panel from you, we can talk about this. And I would like to start with David Alpert, because if we begin with the elements, the chemical elements of what started this, first, of course, there's Robert Kirkman's phenomenal work that made it ultimately to this screen and this panel. How did that happen?
I met Robert in Comic-Con in Chicago about 2000, and we started talking, and he had some ideas. His first book was a book called Battle Pope, which was the thing that sort of attracted me to him. Very different, as you might imagine from the title. But we ended up making that
There's no Pope in it and no battle?
No, very different from The Walking Dead.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
We actually, that was the first thing we did together. We turned it into an animated series for Spike.com. And we were the #1 rated show on Spike.com until they launched Boobs of the Day. And when Boobs of the Day came on, we were
harbinger
dethroned.
of things to come.
Exactly. So we lost that. We then, Robert sort of put together a proposal for the book, The Walking Dead. And when he pitched it to Image Comics at the time, they said, I don't know, a zombie book, I don't think that's really going to work. I don't think people want to see a zombie thing. You need a hook. But we really sort of believed in the idea, and Robert said, you know what? There's space aliens are going to come in. It's really sort of a premise to set up that there's going to be space aliens coming in. And so he said, oh, that sounds cool, we'll do that. So he started the book, and the book comes out. And about issue 4, issue 5, they're like, when are you going to start setting up the space aliens? and he goes, nah, I was just kidding. And thank goodness, because the book's
You have to know Robert's sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because honestly, half the time when he's joking, you don't know it.
Yeah.
And you can get very embarrassed very quickly by not understanding his dry sense of humor.
That's the truth. And that was really it. The book took off pretty much instantly. It was sort of a big runaway hit right out of the gate. Initially, we were approaching features, and what happened was 28 Days Later had just come out, and even though the stories go in very different directions, the setup in the book and the setup of 28 Days Later, they start in the same place. So people sort of said, oh, we can't do that. And then we really talked about the idea was really it's the zombie movie that never ends. And just remember that, AMC, it never ends. Ever.
From your mouth, Dave, from your mouth.
We all remember that Scheherazade kept her head on her shoulders by telling all those stories night after night. So I think keeping certain heads on certain shoulders and getting rid of certain heads from other shoulders is what this show is all about. And we do have a sizzle reel, right? You're telling me the truth now? You're not kidding me. Here we had a comic book, essentially graphic novel inspiration. And Gale, when was the first time you saw these books, and what was your thought?
If I recall correctly, it started publishing, was it 2004 or 2003?
It'll be the 10th anniversary this October.
Yes, so it's 2003. Yay. And I remember looking at it then, and at the time I was focused on features. And I actually read it and thought, okay, I don't know how to make the feature version of this. Where would you end it? So I put it aside, and then it was about 6 years later, I picked it up again. One of the executives in my company said, "Have you ever read The Walking Dead?" And I said, "Yeah, but oh, The Walking Dead. Oh my God, that would be a fantastic TV series." And we were getting into television, and really wanted to find the ultimate, the best character-driven genre series. And I said, look, check and see who has the rights. And in checking, we found out that at one point, Frank Darabont had been involved with the project. And Frank is one of my husband's closest friends. They met, one of their first jobs was writing for George Lucas and the Young Indiana Jones TV series. And so I called Frank and I said, "The Walking Dead." He said, "Don't mention those 3 words. The experience was not very good, and I will defer to DA to talk about the first incarnation many of you were lucky enough never to see.
Well, we sold it to NBC. I think it was about 2005, and it was one of those things. You get the call. You get the call from NBC, and you're saying, "Have you seen this book? It's got zombies on the cover. There's blood. I mean, it's a pretty gory book. I mean, you've seen the show. It's a pretty gory show." And they said, yeah, no, we love it. We totally want to do it. We're going to do something totally different. And I learned the first time, anytime a network executive tells you they want to do something totally different, your project is dead. So we sold it to NBC.
Broadcast Network.
Broadcast Network, that's right.
Thank you, Marci.
That's right. That is right. And we sold it to NBC, and then Frank wrote a script that was great, and we're like, Frank Darabont writing a script, directing a show for TV, this is going to be fantastic. They get the script, it comes out, you get that weird moment in pilot season where they come out the pickups. We get a call from NBC saying, "Sorry, we're not going to go ahead." I was like, "What about doing something different?" They're like, "Yeah, we just don't want to do a zombie show." I was like, "You knew that." So anyway, that was one of the more frustrating things. Frank had gotten Greg Nicotero involved and done all these crazy bite tests of Greg biting somebody's arm and blood spurting out. I mean, it was awesome. So
It was not NBC awesome.
yeah, exactly. It was AMC awesome.
But so Marci, so NBC's loss was your gain.
It was.
Can you pull the mic a little closer?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
When DA and Robert started looking for other homes for The Walking Dead, we were the lucky beneficiaries of the pitches, and our management really, after the success of Mad Men and Breaking Bad, and something different isn't something we're afraid of at AMC, thought this was an unbelievable opportunity for us to not only produce a show, but to commit to produce 6 episodes, not pilot it, and to own it. And it was our first foray into the ownership model as well. And we haven't looked back since.
But the interesting thing is when I talked to Frank and I said, "Frank, so AMC," because he said, "This has been submitted to most of the cable networks and they've passed." Well, most of the cable networks that will make this. And he said, "AMC. I mean, come on, Mad Men? Mad Men? Zombies? I don't know." And AMC actually said, "You know, you may not be familiar with one of our most successful, highly rated blocks of programming, which is Fear Fest, just 2 weeks of classic genre and horror films that they air leading up to the 2 weeks leading up to Halloween." And but honestly, I mean, Frank was so resistant that he didn't want to go in and go through that same experience where you're led to believe that this is really going to be groundbreaking television, only to have only to have the show not go forward. And something many of you, I assume, are feature film producers, where a project can take 12, 20 years is not remarkable. This project we pitched in October. We were airing, having already shot the first 6 episodes the next October.
How true has this been to get back, maybe to talk to David about Robert Kirkman, to what it is you'd envisioned, what he had envisioned?
You know, I think there's, it's actually pretty faithful to the book, but the one thing that Robert was insistent on, and I think that Gale and I really strive to figure out the right balance, is how do we stay true to what everybody loves about the book, but make it interesting for those people who've read the book? So it's not that it's not like you're seeing the same thing that you've already read. So I'd say that in the main, we sort of use the book for all the important milestones: the introduction of the governor, the introduction of Michonne, the prison, things like that. But how they unfold, when major deaths happen, if they're going to happen, all that we try to sort of play with the time and expectations of, so to keep it interesting and fresh, for not just for us, but for the fans.
And Sharon Tal Yguado, there were 2 leaps here. There was one that was AMC's, and then there was another one that was yours. I mean, this is an international phenomenon, but it's not like Downton Abbey. I don't have to wait 3 months to see it after the Brits see it, you know. So talk about treating this the way that you have, that you're marketing it like a movie, that it's shown around the world at virtually the same time, that everybody is on board. This is a global thing in the most literal sense of the word.
So yeah, while AMC was considering moving forward with the project and actually decided to move forward with the project with 6 episodes, at the same time, we, Fox International Channels, and just to give you a little bit of background, we run 250 entertainment channels worldwide in 120 markets that are all airing US content and carry similar brands. So we were at a time that we were contemplating with the idea of treating a TV show like a theatrical release. We have the platform, we have the capability, and we also thought that there is an urgency. If once you had to be a world traveler to know what show is airing in the US, because you only knew about it when it was promoted and airing in your country. Today, because of web connectivity and social networks, there are social conversations, and viewers all over the world know about a show before it even airs. So there's a new urgency that is a product of the viewers' expectations, and there's a big risk that comes if these expectations are not met, and that's piracy. So we knew that the time has come and that we wanted to find that show, but how the hell do you find that show? How do you pick up the one show that will be the first big, huge TV event? And we looked at about 30 projects. It was pretty depressing. We passed on all of them, and then the Walking Dead script landed on our desk, and it was one of these, we read it over a weekend, and I was scratching my forehead and thinking, how am I going to explain our management that instead of launching an innovative procedural, we're going to launch a zombie apocalypse? But then the second scratch was, how do we explain AMC that we're the perfect partners for this project, because they were chased by many other potential partners? And Marci can talk a little bit more about that. But, once we've identified The Walking Dead, we really thought, to be honest, now in retrospect, it looks like a no-brainer. At the time, it was met with a lot of skepticism. People thought we were out of our minds. I can't tell you how many people told me zombies are not sexy, and they won't travel internationally, and a zombie apocalypse is an American phenomenon. It's not an international thing. But we really knew that there was something very special. And I think what really caught our attention as well was how cinematic the script, the pilot episode was. And if you want to treat a show like a theatrical release and launch it that way, you need that quality to be there. So with Gale and with Frank and with Dave and Robert and AMC, it really seemed like the perfect package.
And when Sharon approached us, we were talking to very traditional distributors of television product, pretty much everyone. The script was that good, and the underlying material and the pedigree of the producers attracted literally every distribution company. I worked at Fox for a very long time, and when Sharon called me, I literally said to her,
Who are you guys?
Who are you? We don't even know what division of Fox you're at. And it began a very interesting partnership between AMC and Fox International Channel Group, in that the proposition that Fox brought to us with their global channel group was an opportunity to work with another programmer to launch the show in a way that spoke to us as television programmers and marketers. And, you know, Fox literally won the business from us and laid out what we believe is a first of its kind release of a television series. It releases on the Fox channels globally within the same week as it airs in the US on AMC. So by the time our next episode airs, it's already been in 122 countries, fully dubbed. And we can talk about some of the challenges of delivering a television show globally on a week-to-week basis.
But one of the big difference between launching a movie globally and launching a TV show globally is when you launch a movie, it's a one-off. You have your 6 months marketing campaign and you know, a headache of operations, but there's the big box office weekend and some weeks to follow, but that's it. Where with a TV show, it's just the beginning. So for the life of the series, and it could be 8 episodes, 10 episodes, hopefully 20, 30, 40 for The Walking Dead, you know that you made that commitment. You're in for a day and date release for, you know, for so many years.
And
So
that
it's a big commitment.
It works both ways. It requires year-round planning between AMC and Fox on marketing matters. In addition, it requires a lot of cooperation from our producers in delivering the show to make the various requirements to have the show dubbed and prepared for international distribution in the same period of time.
One of the coolest thing I thought about the marketing campaign that was really a synergy between AMC and FIC was looking at the Walking Dead campaign as an actual viral outbreak. And how do you go about that? So the first step was, and you guys can all talk about Comic-Con, was seeding the virus with the core fans, and then taking that ripple effect later in next stages and widening the reach of the show. And as you saw in the video, the final stage was a week before launch in 26 the biggest cities in the world. We mimicked basically an actual zombie outbreak against the biggest landmarks, and that was communicated between newscasts all over the world and was building up for the AMC actual premiere event in Los Angeles, which was, we got so much buzz and attention for it. It was great.
Gale, how did that work? How did it germinate? And if you were doing one of those like Wall Street charts, did it start really slow and then it spiked? And how much of it was fans? How much of it was you? How much of it was social media?
As DA knows, as well as anyone, the most important thing is to get the fans who are already invested in the property on board. So that means that at any step of the way, you can alienate them. And imagine when the first piece of casting is an unknown to American audiences, UK actor named Andrew Lincoln, whose only credit that we're aware of in America is as a romantic lead in Love Actually. So, you know, but the fans also, their ideas of who should bring these characters to life are not always the best actors. They will give you a pass until they see the first piece of material. And we debuted a promo reel at Comic-Con. And nothing was more important probably. You know, obviously we had to get the show right, we had to get the episode right. But in terms of communicating to the world, Comic-Con is an international event with press from around the world present. And you can tell right then and there if you have struck the right chord. And, you know, AMC worked really hard, actually, with Empire. They put the reel together.
And the commitment to Comic-Con, which really Gale and DA are you know, evangelists for, and having our network embrace using Comic-Con and the genesis of the genre and the fan base as a launch strategy for the series has been very, very important to the growth of our efforts to have folks embrace the show. And we continue to come back to Comic-Con. We are at Comic-Con in San Diego every year with The Walking Dead. We have an experience for the fans who visit the floor, and every year we're challenged to do more and more to have fans step into a scene of The Walking Dead. It's weird when you see people letting their
With their little
3-year-olds
kids, yes.
be handcuffed to the top of the roof and pretend to saw their wrists off. But it's Comic-Con entertainment for you. But it is, I think, as marketers of a television series, and you know, we're the home of Mad Men and Breaking Bad, but to understand how to find your core audience and embrace that audience, and then to take it a step further and launch a global marketing campaign with some pretty, you know, out there stunts. We certainly got a couple phone calls when we had zombies on subways and arriving in Grand Central Station. But it really did speak to the fans, and then the show in many ways has become, you know, viral from there in both the literal and metaphoric sense.
Well, I wanted to ask Sharon if there are cultural differences in marketing too, because you spoke about how do you make it an international phenomenon. You got some pushback on that.
You know, I think what really, really worked for the show and was seated already in, you know, the very early stages of creative is we did not position the show as a zombie apocalypse show. It was a character-driven drama. And I think at the end of the day, the stories of The Walking Dead, the characters of The Walking Dead are so universal. And the idea of, you know, what happens to humanity in the absence of governments and rules, the Lord of the Fly aspect of the show is incredibly universal. And that's what we sold in the first season.
And that's what we bought as a network. And I think really DA and Gale can talk about it, but you know, Robert often says The Walking Dead don't really refer to the zombies. They refer to those who are left behind in the zombie apocalypse. And that storytelling and those human challenges are why our network pursued the property to begin with. And the commitment of the executive producers and the amazing creative team we have behind the series to keep telling that aspect of the story is really what we believe is why this is a television show whose audience grows exponentially every year.
David and Gale on that.
I remember very early in a conversation with one of a potential Chinese distributor, there was through this translator, there was a very weird moment where they said, we don't know that this show is going to work in China. You know, in China, there's a very strong taboo about flesh eating. And I said,
Some other places too, maybe.
we have the same taboo in the U.S. But I was like, it's not really about the flesh eating. So it ended up being, though, I think that when you pitch the concept and when you see sort of the gore, it can turn people off. But I think it's really been a credit to sort of the characters that we've been able to sort of find and embrace and show that it really is about character and storytelling and drama as much as it is about the fanboy service that we need to provide as well.
And Gale, I think the characters, I mean, you and I have talked about this, the idea that, you know, the forthrightness of the characters, the willingness of you guys
Right.
to kill off major characters.
Yes.
You're not squeamish.
Yes. Well, you know, the interesting thing also going back to marketing is that if you look at all the materials that have been created both by AMC, Fox International, and any other partners, you won't see a zombie in any of those one-sheets. You know, you'll see them obviously in some of the filmic the TV spots, but that is because what we're selling is a show about characters and the moral decisions that they make in a world in which there are no longer really they're life or death decisions that you make every day, but there's no moral legal authority to arrest you and put you in jail should you not follow them. And that is the center of every episode. So we get a lot of people saying, I don't like zombies, I don't like horror, I don't like genre. And they'll hear from enough friends or family that they have to watch the show. and this is something else I think we should discuss, but in the past, serialized content was problematic. It was problematic because if you missed an episode or you didn't watch it from the very beginning, you didn't get an opportunity to catch up. Well, now we've all heard the term binge viewing, and that has really worked to the show's success because we have ramped up in viewership, not only with every season premiere, but because we also have a mid-season finale and another mid-season premiere, we've actually ramped up in viewership between those, and that's because of binge viewing. And the binge viewing comes, as I said, because people who were told that they had to see the show had an opportunity to do so, to see the first 2 or 3 seasons, so that when we re-premiere, they're caught up.
And one of the key linchpins to that strategy is that we made the decision at AMC, and we were an early adopter of the idea of making an exclusive deal in the SVOD arena, and we made a deal for The Walking Dead with Netflix, and they have been fantastic partners in bringing the show to audiences, and they're fairly happy with Walking Dead as well. But that was a very important decision. People know where they can go to watch The Walking Dead. We also have phenomenal catch-up opportunities with our cable affiliate partners, and I think, Pat, maybe we should show them what our friends at Time Warner have done to tout The Walking Dead.
Take that, Apple.
You know, the other thing that you may be aware of is that how remarkable is it that the show that's now an hour of people talking about The Walking Dead, The Talking Dead is one of the highest rated shows after The Walking Dead on Sunday night television, averaging over 4 million viewers.
Over 4 million viewers. I think we beat most shows on NBC primetime with The Talking Dead. So. Not that we're going after NBC on this panel. No. But really the phenomenon of The Talking Dead, we saw something that was going on online when the show went off air. And we saw a level of engagement both during the show. Our Twitter activity is, we're trending kind of off the charts while the show's airing every episode. And so the idea was, how do we marshal that excitement of the fans and bring them into kind of an aggregated environment, a curated conversation, if you will, about what they just saw. And it gives us an opportunity to further the messaging and keep The Walking Dead in the popular culture zeitgeist. We have Chris Hardwick, who is of The Nerdist and a fanboy extraordinaire, and he's able to really bring a lot of folks both into the inside information about the show and also bring famous fans to the discussion about the show. And it just perpetuates all of these things that make Walking Dead not just a television show, but a kind of experience and an event that you come to on Sunday nights for 2 periods of time each year, and to kind of coalesce around. And it's the kind of Twitter cooler or water cooler type of programming that we really are very committed to cultivating. It's interesting, we talked about who the audience is, and we are the #1 television show drama among women.
Yes.
So we beat, we are only surpassed with women by shows like The Voice, but we have more viewers than Grey's Anatomy. So this is not a fanboy-only genre.
And it's a very enviable demographic, and a lot of people are dying to figure out how you do it.
My husband's parents, who are 70, it's their favorite show on TV. So go figure.
But Gale, there's not only the meta level of fans, but you deal with them personally, even on Twitter too. The fans identify very closely with the characters and feel very strongly about.
Oh yes, when we kill off a popular character, we do get death threats. That's the part of social media. That's the little dirty secret of social media, is that the fans so identify with characters that you kill them off. First, they're in denial. It really is the stages of grief. They're in denial, and they say, we didn't really see them die. So that bullet, that gunshot off camera, they're not really dead. They're coming back, right? And then they get angry. And then when they get angry, they threaten to hunt you down and kill you, not realizing there's a difference between reality and fantasy.
But the fans help each other out.
But the
too, you
fans,
say.
so the flip side of that is that the fans have created, we actually have a hashtag for it, TWD Family. And they have globally created a family unit of people who care about the show. The show is so important to them that when they're going through tough times, whether it's an episode maybe of mental illness, cancer treatments, they support each other and they're there for each other. And that's something I've just never seen before. But that's one of the really rewarding aspects of the show, is that people, a girl who was being bullied found a support group and sought treatment because of the TWD family that she found on Twitter.
Walking Dead's really all about bringing people together.
David, of course, it's a blessing to have it out there and on, but sustaining it, as everybody said, it's so different from a feature film where you have a very clear arc. Talk about a little bit about the creative challenges of that sustaining. You ebb a little bit as you kill off a major character. You forward a little bit, just like the people in The Walking Dead. I mean,
Sure.
They retreat, they advance.
Well,
How does that work?
I think, so in terms of the sustainability of the show, I mean, the great thing and sort of the amazing thing is that the comic book is still ongoing. So last year it celebrated its 100th issue. We're up to about 112 right now. There's a series of novels that are ongoing. So what's great is from when
And every one of them, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, I might add.
That's right. But what happens is now we actually, our story is somewhere around issue 45 or 50, thereabouts, just depending on where we are. So right now we still have about 60 issues of untapped stories to tell and 3 novels of untapped stories to tell. So what's great about that is we then say, okay, well, that gives us at least another 4 or 5 years of stories to mine. But it does get to that place where when you start making those decisions, Robert always talks about that weird sense when he came on set, and he's like, I killed you, I killed you, I killed you, I killed you, because he was revisiting things from 5 or 6 years earlier. So I think the real challenge is how do we find a way to keep it interesting, to sort of keep you guessing. So even if you've read and know it intimately, because a lot of our fans will let us know when they don't like a change, they'll let us know instantly and dramatically and repeatedly. But when that happens, we have to find a way to sort of earn out, make that something that was worthwhile.
Yeah, do you have any good stories to tell from production?
Well, we shoot in Georgia, and we shoot in a small town called Sonoy, Georgia, and it is one of those towns that was dying. There were 6 businesses in the entire town when we arrived there, and now people travel for their vacation from around the world. And while we've been there, they've traveled from Japan, from Iceland, from Norway, from South America. And there are now 48 businesses that are thriving in the town of Sonoy, thanks to the fact that it's become a tourist destination. And we shot there last season, and we closed down the town, and I'm sure you can imagine that initially the shops were not very pleased. They thought that they would actually lose business. As it turned out, instead it became a magnet for people. They just have to go in through the back door. And there was one point, and we're shooting late at night. It was about 1 a.m, and Andy Lincoln, who plays Rick Grimes, our lead, had to go to the restroom, and we didn't have enough time for him to go back to the trailer. So we went into the Sonoy Coffee House, and he walked in, and the place was full of fans, and they gave him a standing ovation as he's trying desperately to make it to the restroom. And that was something certainly that none of us quite expected.
There's a question whether you'd ever consider moving it from Atlanta.
We've got the best cast and crew. Everyone loves Georgia. In fact, 2 of the people, and I won't tell you who in case you haven't seen this last season, that we killed off are dearly departed, who did not live in Atlanta before they started shooting the series, are now moving to Atlanta permanently, even though we killed them off.
A boon. So, and a question for Sharon, how much time between English delivery and foreign broadcast? What are the mechanics of that?
That is
I guess
the
that struck a
nightmare of
nerve.
all. Do you want to talk about that?
I'll let you start.
I mean, usually it takes 60 days. In order to get this one on air, you know, a day after the US, we use expedite. I mean, we created new process, we created new facilities for it. And now we do it in about 10 days, which is, you know, in 32 languages.
So what happens is we deliver the show to Fox once the picture is locked to the audio. Often that means the show isn't finished. We're still doing music, special effects, so that the translation team, we won't tell you where they're located in the world, but can start translating the scripts verbatim into all these languages, and that happens about 2 weeks prior to when the dubbing takes place, and Fox can dub, and as the season we get further into every season, delivery gets more crunched. That's just a typical issue in television series, and Fox can dub in 10 days.
Yeah,
So.
and if, you know, if a year ago, 2 years ago, several countries still used mail to deliver tape, that does not exist anymore. Everything is done, obviously, digitally and very, very quick.
And then we cooperate on marketing assets between our companies so that the channels in the Fox channel group can leverage off of AMC's marketing work. And I think, Pat, you asked a question about cultural differences. There are even cultural differences in marketing. We've learned that certain portions, certain countries in certain parts of Europe like to tell what we consider to be spoilers in the U.S. And so we've had some that's the way they cut their promos. And so we've had some very interesting issues when the geo-block goes down with various versions of the show being promoted differently than it would be promoted in major markets. So we've worked through those issues.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges is, you know, first, okay, launching this show globally, what happens when you now end with the most talked about, pirated, you know, show? How do you protect it when you're dealing with so many facilities that get material earlier than the US release? And that has been, you know, a continuous challenge that we're facing. I think if we were, not to say anything bad about CSI, but if we were distributing, a procedural, I don't think that would have ever happened. But when you have such a viral, such a loud show that became everyone's conversation, there are many, many challenges that come with that.
A question from the audience, how much do you rely on VFX versus in-camera effects? And has the upheaval in American VFX community had any effect on the production?
We are old school. We shoot on film. We shoot on Super 16. And Greg Nicotero, who's now won 2 Emmys for his and Can VFX, his company's work on The Walking Dead, we do as much as we can in camera on set. And Greg is on set every day. He also directed our season premiere this year and directs a number of the episodes. But his team does so much of the work. Now, obviously, you can't really chop someone's head off. Yeah, I know.
You sound so regretful when you say that.
Well, you know, it'd be so much easier. But we also work with Stargate Visual Effects, and they have a facility in Georgia located on the studio lot where we film, as well as in South Pasadena. Being a Pasadena resident, very happy about that. And they do remarkable work hand in hand with Greg Nicotero's team. And we have a permanent visual effects supervisor on set coordinating everything so that the handoff is seamless at this point. But most of what you'll see is primarily on set.
I just wanted to go back, actually, it was a very interesting thing for me because I hadn't really experienced this, was when we were trying to decide what to shoot on, there's a lot of pressure to try to shoot on digital just to save cost and to save time. And we had done this camera test, and I remember we shot all different things. We shot 16, we shot 35, we shot all different types of video, and we just looked at it, and honestly, given the amount of practical makeup that we do, it was instantly obvious that shooting on 16 was the best thing to do for the production, because in some of the high def video, like, you actually can really see the grain of where the makeup goes, and it would have driven up our cost to make it seamless. And the other thing is, actually, when we shot on 16, it actually gave it a look unlike anything that was on television, and that was sort of like, it was not something that anybody expected. It wasn't something that we were trying to steer towards, but as what you saw, everyone's like, oh, that just looks different. Nothing else on television looks like that. And we're like, that's a good thing.
There was a question, several questions about whether there's anything in the larger culture, the zeitgeist, that has kind of laid the groundwork for this, for zombies, for the sense of apocalypse, for that sense of, when anarchy arrives, how each of us will prepare for it. And maybe each of you brings a different take to that. Gale?
Clearly the world is going through difficult times. There's been the economic collapse. Even though the stock market's doing well, the average person is not doing so well. Main Street's not doing so well. That's not just a phenomenon here in America. It's throughout the world. In addition, there's the sense, and I think it's because news is instantaneous now. When there's a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, a tsunami, there's just a feeling throughout the world that, when is the shoe going to drop for me? And when that does, who will I become in that apocalypse? And that's why I think that the characters that we've created, which represent a broad cross-section of people and reactions to the apocalypse, has really resounded around the world.
Do you think then that people will identify with the characters according to what they would like to be or what they think their responses might be? There may be a Team Carl or a Team Rick or maybe a Team Governor, for all we know.
There's Team Everyone. I mean, the first couple of seasons, it was Team Rick and Team Shane. And once again, these become hashtags. And the wonderful thing about The Talking Dead is that we can engage an audience. We actually do polling on The Talking Dead where people are asked moral questions. If you've seen the show, should Shane have shot Otis? What would you do? And it's remarkable, actually. It makes you feel very good when you realize that most people would do the right thing, not the expedient thing.
There's an interesting thing going on, because we talk a lot about the economic situation, sort of how people identify with horror movies in time of distress. But at the same time, I also feel like there's a societal thing, a shift that's gone on with the rise of technology, whether it's the fact that you wake up in the morning and there's 200 emails that are waiting for you, or the fact that when my dad used to get home from work, no one would call him from work unless there was like a giant emergency, whereas now, it's not uncommon for people to get phone calls at all times because their cell phones are with them. There's this constant sense of, I think, like omnipresent dread of something about to happen to you, and that it's nameless, it's faceless, you can't identify it. But all you really have to do is, I feel like this, when I wake up in the morning, I take my bat and I go whack-a-mole. I beat down 100 emails, I return 100 phone calls, and then I've done nothing. And then after I come back from lunch, and it's like the same thing, they've come back there, and it's like I have 100 or 200 zombies I got to deal with at my door. And I feel like that sense, though, of that you can never be away from them, you can never be entirely free, that as much as you do, you're not going to make a dent in this horrific landscape, I think in some bizarre way resonates with people in terms of like the way that society hasn't yet come to terms with technology.
And we've found there's been a lot of media coverage on what Dave is talking about, that not only do millennials and whatever the generation below millennials is, relate to kind of this feeling of kind of lost in society, but the relentlessness of society, it speaks to older audiences, and therefore when we talk about the universality of the show, it plays on all of these levels, and it's why we think there has been such incredible growth in our audience and incredible engagement, which is an important metric for those of us in the broadcast space with this property. And it really does speak to folks. And as Sharon said, we too were kind of looked at like we were crazy at the beginning of The Walking Dead. vampires were very hot, but they're quite sexy, and the zombie crowd not so much. So, but I think the larger messaging about and metaphors that can be drawn from the zombie apocalypse really do speak to folks.
Yeah. And I think also internationally we realize that it gets such a wide, incredibly wide audience because of the accessibility. At the end of the day, it's a pretty simple conceit. Once you buy into the apocalypse, the day-to-day is a surviving story that anybody can tap. If many of the genres shows and movies are not for everyone because of the suspense of disbelief, because of the deeper, more complicated mythology. And here it's a pretty simple one that once you buy into, you're part of the show.
What about all the additional content about the games and everything else that have to do with this? Do they satisfy different niches? You're going to have somebody who, like your parents, would not maybe be playing the Walking Dead game.
Oh, they are.
Oh, they are? How good are they?
Pretty good. But it's a different stuff.
I think one of the approaches that we try to take pretty early on when it comes to sort of other media and expansions is to not, and I think a lot of franchises have fallen by not taking this approach, is we don't take the same story and tell it over and over again. We don't, so there's no version of the video game where you get to play Rick, right? So that's the sort of, I feel like, the 80s version of, like, you go see a movie, here's like sort of the quickie, cheapy game you can play and sort of get invested in. Everything sort of needs to stand on its own, so that if you can play the game without having watched the show or read the comic, or you can read the comic without having watched the show, but we really believe that if you do all of these things, your experience in all of these media is enriched because you sort of know things that other people don't necessarily know.
And I think Dave's point is really well taken, and we have our partners at Image Comics and Skybound, who are the keepers of the underlying property, which is the comic book, and they have a way of storytelling and speaking to an audience both through the comics and through other ancillary experiences that extends the relationship between fans. And we do the same with the television series. A primary example of how we speak to different audiences is the strategy we employ with our home video. We have one of the most successful home videos in recent history in both television and film. And we have multiple releases of the home video that come out each season. There are collector's editions. Last year we sold 50,000 Blu-ray DVDs in a special collector's edition, which was what we call Screwdriver in Your Eye Zombie Guy. And for those of you who are fans of the show, you'll remember that particular scene. And we actually have a collector's holder, if you will, for your DVDs that unscrews by manipulating the
Is that a Phillips or a
screwdriver.
flathead screwdriver? I never figured that one out.
And then this year, I think they're almost sold out. The season 3 special edition DVD is, you probably saw it in the trailer. We have the aquarium, the head aquarium, and it will be the holder for your DVDs. So there's a
Black and
collector.
white version.
We had black and white versions on television. They weren't released on home video. And so we speak to different audiences. Obviously, the high-end collector has seen the show. They've probably downloaded it on iTunes, and yet they want something more. And so to deliver to them something that they can keep that's very special, but we also speak to mass audience when we deliver, DVDs in mass at Walmart.
So the question, how do you monetize your transmedia content, or do you use it as a tool to engage the fans and
Yes.
sales?
Double bottom
the
line,
answer seemed
Pat,
like
double
yes.
bottom line.
All right. So are there any products that you've turned down, things that you thought were just too gross or not
Yes.
appropriate?
Well,
Like
we've
what?
certainly dealt with the issue of, we've been approached by various implement companies, let's just say.
Ginsu
and,
knife?
So we certainly don't feel like that's an appropriate place for us to be. But we've had some interesting discussions. We do have fun toys and collector's items out there. We have things for the high-end collector, and we have bobbleheads too. So we do have some healthy conversations about whether you're in or you're out on the cool meter if you do a bobblehead. But we apparently they're very cool. So.
Here's another question for Marci. What are the development notes like for a show like The Walking Dead, like your relationship with the show itself?
Well, I actually think the
mechanics.
producers are better to answer that since I'm a business executive at AMC. So I'll let you guys, let it rip, guys.
You know, there's one thing that you hope for as a producer, which is that you're working with a team of executives who give really good notes, and AMC gives fantastic notes. They're also open to the dialogue with our showrunner, Scott Gimple, who actually the very first clip, he wrote Clear, which was that episode, directed, I might add, by Tricia Brock. And also, they're open to a dialogue that if the note doesn't really work or there's no way to address it, you have the dialogue and they'll let it go. And that isn't certainly the case in my experience.
David, did you want to say anything about that?
You know, honestly, I feel like we have, you know, we didn't trust in the very beginning, given our NBC experience, that we had good creative partners and that they were going to let us do all the things that they said they were going to let us do. There's a reason why we shot a little girl in the head in the opening scene of the pilot, was really to put that to the test and see, like, we gave a very good justification from a story perspective as to why that was necessary. But really, we just wanted to see if they were going to let us do it. And they did. So we felt like, and honestly, that started, you know, I think it's been, you know, this will be our 4th season of a really great collaboration.
We haven't had one censorship note ever. We've never had to change anything. Nothing has been censored.
That's because there's no nipples, right? You've done so much in feature. How?
That's a spoiler.
Shoot. So
You know, John Bernthal has some damn nice nipples.
everybody's taking notes on that right now.
But I
to
will
look
say,
again.
part of the reason that the collaboration on things like censorship issues works so well is that the producers understand the guidelines for our network and are very respectful of those and work within those parameters. And so it's made the collaboration on a show that, you know, we certainly had a lot of conversations about before we began this process. So it's a two-way street.
Because you've done so much in features, what was it like making that move to try to episodic television where the story does go on for you?
This is the most fantastic thing I've ever done in my 35-year career. There's no question. The opportunity to tell 16 hours of character-driven drama, a mini movie every week, in the period of time that you would be halfway through a feature film, is a complete and total blessing.
I just, as a fanboy, I'm not sure I 100% agree with you. Like, you've done some pretty amazing things. So, like, like The Walking Dead is pretty awesome, but like, come on, Terminator, like, it's pretty. That's like a iconic thing. I mean, if we can last as long as the Terminator has, I feel like then we could say it. But I don't know. Don't give yourself enough credit.
If we have time, I'd love at one point to talk about wonderful accidents, because we're talking about The Walking Dead and it seems like everything was so well planned and so elegantly. I'd like to share with you some of the wonderful accidents that we had, if we have time.
Sure, please.
The first one was why the show aired on Halloween.
Yes.
That was not planned at all. And that one gave me a real heart attack. Do you want to tell the story?
No, go. Well, you want to tell your reaction, and then, well, we called Fox. There was Dave, you're gonna have to help me on the sports stuff. There was Brett Favre had come back to
His first game with
Minnesota.
Come on, you guys, help us.
He betrayed us to Minnesota, and then, well, never mind.
Anyway,
I'm too invested.
when his first game back was scheduled for the original scheduled premiere of The Walking Dead, the first episode, and
after working for 6 months on the global release and having everything working out brilliantly, we get the call from AMC saying, guess what? We're changing your release date. After the release is communicated on the trades, and after we've done deals with affiliates and all of that, Marci calls me to say,
trust us. And, part of, it turned out to be a wonderful accident. We think the decision was right. And then I'm sure the next thing Sharon's going to tell you is when we ordered 13 episodes for season 2, because we are committed to trying to connect The Walking Dead to our 20-year franchise, which is Fear Fest, as Gale alluded to. We looked at the schedule and realized that if we ran the episodes straight through, we would have them airing in a pretty dismal period of time for television, which is through December, and Sunday nights in January, which are challenging nights due to special events and things like football playoffs and Super Bowls. And so we called Fox and told them that we were actually going to introduce the concept of a programming hiatus, and we would be dividing the season into 2 programming blocks.
Which ended up being a huge, I think, success for the show, because now you have 2 premieres and 2 finales that, the creatives are very aware of from an early stage, so they can create cliffhangers, and we're seeing growth in ratings every, comeback. But at the time, it was a pretty scary thought. We did not know if we can retain audiences. Definitely international audiences are not used to a break in the middle of a season.
I think it actually helped us from a storytelling perspective too, because in the beginning we were like, what, how are we gonna, it sounds like we're writing 2 seasons into one, and how do we make them feel different or connect? It really gave us headaches as well, but I feel like when Gale and I and all the writers sort of talked about it, it actually gave us some really nice milestones, like, okay, we're building towards, now we're doing 16, we have a mid-season finale at 8, so we can build up to something there, and then we can have a second build point, and it really actually gave us a little bit of structure to what otherwise could be a very amorphous season.
And interestingly, some of the broadcast networks, most recently in this television season, have adopted a bifurcated season as well. So, but as Sharon indicated, some of these things were fortunate accidents, and yet they've become, somewhat precedent-setting for the industry.
Did each of you have some kind of epiphany, a moment when you realized this is huge, that you walked into a shop and saw something, or you saw a fan's comment online that made you think this is really immense? Besides your parents, Sharon, watching this.
I mean, first is the numbers. I mean, you're a network, and you look at the next day ratings, and they blow your mind off. They're incredible, and they keep growing. This is an unstoppable show. I remember that when we saw the first numbers, I sent an email to Charlie Coyer, the president of AMC, and I told him, I think we're going to compete with American Idol eventually. Back in the day, it seemed crazy, but because of
This
other...
year we beat
American Idol.
I mean, and you all probably know this, but The Walking Dead is now the first cable show to win the broadcast season against all programming, both cable and broadcast. So I would say...
in the 18 to 49 demographic.
Yep.
So I would say as a network executive, that moment, I think, for all of us who work at AMC, I'm not sure we still are cognizant of it. It's really, it's such a remarkable feat that I'm not sure we all even believe it's true.
David, did you have an epiphany?
Honestly, the truth is, this conversation's bringing out all my superstition, so I feel very uneasy about that. So rather not talk about
Let's
it.
all knock on wood, please. Anyone?
I think we're done.
I think we're wrapping up, so is there any last point you'd like to make? Time, station?
We haven't announced this season's air date yet, our premiere date, so we can't give you that. But it will be in October. I think it's a fairly confident.
And we're gearing up to tell all to start to reveal the show to all of you, starting with Comic-Con, which is just a 6 weeks or so away. And what we can say is that, from the network's perspective, we could not be more thrilled about what's happening with season 4, and the producers are again delivering what we believe to be very, very compelling programming. So we hope you all tune in.
Please thank the panel.